Feeling overwhelmed by negative news? 5 Good News Stories is your daily dose of what's going right in the world. Like the 103-year-old granny who got caught speeding in her sports car because she was living life to the fullest, or the family who found their missing cat after 3 years when it showed up at their vacation rental. Remember Flop the penguin's incredible comeback after his injury? And that guy who broke the world record for most high fives in 24 hours while raising money for charity? These are the stories that remind us the world is still full of wonder and joy. 5 Good News Stories. Pure positivity 3 times a week. 5 Good News Stories, available wherever you get your podcasts. 5 Good News Stories.
Do you know what animal can sleep for 3 years without eating? Neither did I until I started hosting 5 daily trivia questions. Hi, I'm Mark Ellison. Every weekday, I'll challenge you with 5 brain-bending questions spanning history, pop culture, science, and more. Perfect for your morning commute or lunch break. 5 daily trivia questions. And by the way, it's the snail that can sleep for 3 years. 5 daily trivia questions wherever you get your shows.
Calaroga Shark Media.
My name is Daniel Marsh. Last time, I told you how the true purpose behind the Yemen ambush was revealed. The capture of Captain Maya Santiago for her biometric access to critical military systems. How Meera Patel broke ranks to share evidence with the FBI and journalist Eliza Morgan. And how National Security Advisor Reynolds continued to obstruct proper investigation by bringing in private contractor Franklin Webb. This is Signal Lost. March 18, 2025, Washington, D.C., 7 a.m. The president's address to the nation was brief but solemn, broadcast live from the Oval Office. I watched from my apartment, coffee cooling in my hands, as he confirmed what selective leaks had already revealed. American Special Forces had suffered casualties during an operation in Yemen. 4 soldiers killed, 3 missing. We are using every resource at our disposal to locate and recover our personnel, he said, his face grave. Those responsible will be held accountable. We will not rest until our people are home. What he didn't say, what couldn't be said publicly, was that the administration had no idea who those responsible actually were. The official narrative attributed the ambush to Yemeni insurgents, but everyone inside the government knew the truth was far more complex. The broadcast cut to images of flag-draped coffins being unloaded at Dover Air Force Base, the first of the fallen returning home. The families had been notified, their private grief now transformed into public spectacle. The somber choreography of national loss that has become all too familiar over decades of American military operations abroad. I thought about what Eliza had told me after her meeting with Meera Patel, about the deliberate nature of the ambush, about the manufactured intelligence designed to lure that specific team into a perfect trap, about Captain Santiago's unique access credentials being the true objective. If true, it meant those coffins weren't just casualties of war, but victims of a conspiracy that reached into the heart of America's national security apparatus. Soldiers sacrificed not in service to their country, but as collateral damage in someone else's shadow game. The thought made me sick. Across town, in her Georgetown apartment, Eliza Morgan was putting the finishing touches on her article. She'd been writing through the night, fueled by coffee, and the knowledge that what she was about to publish would shake Washington to its foundations. The encrypted drive from Meera Patel had contained exactly what she promised: evidence of compromised signal accounts, documentation of Reynolds' actions since the ambush, and analysis linking the digital breach to the operation's failure. It stopped short of definitively identifying the conspirators, but it established beyond doubt that American soldiers had been betrayed by security failures at the highest levels. Eliza had corroborated key elements through her own sources, creating a story that was bulletproof journalistically, while careful not to reveal information that might endanger the captured soldiers or compromise legitimate rescue efforts. The headline would be devastating in its simplicity: Betrayed: How Security Failures Led to Yemen Disaster. Her editor had already scheduled an emergency meeting with the Tribune's legal team. They all understood the firestorm this would ignite. Denial, outrage, threats, possibly legal action. But the public interest was clear. American lives had been lost due to negligence and potential criminal conduct by government officials. The truth had to emerge. As Eliza sent the final draft, a weight lifted from her shoulders even as a new anxiety took its place. Once published, there would be no going back. She would become a target, professionally, perhaps personally, for forces that had already demonstrated their willingness to sacrifice American lives for their objectives. Her phone rang. Her editor. "They're holding the front page," he said without preamble. "Legal's given preliminary approval with minor redactions. We publish at noon." Eliza glanced at her watch. 5 hours until Washington exploded. "I'm going to need security," she said, the reality of her situation sinking in. "And we should expect severe pushback." "Already arranged," her editor replied. "A car will pick you up in 1 hour. You'll work from a secure location until we assess the reaction." After hanging up, Eliza began packing essentials: laptop, documents, clothes for a few days. Her hands moved methodically while her mind raced ahead, anticipating the seismic impact her story would have. Not just on the public narrative, but on the lives and careers of everyone involved. Reynolds, Mira, the captured soldiers and their families. And on the shadowy figures behind the conspiracy, whoever they might be, the ones who had orchestrated the ambush and were now extracting information from Santiago. Her publication would force them to accelerate their timetable, whatever it was. For better or worse, the game was about to change. In Yemen, Captain Santiago had reached the deadline for her decision. The metal strip she'd worked loose from her cot's frame was now hidden beneath her mattress. A crude weapon, but better than nothing. Her injuries had improved enough that she could move without wincing, though her full strength remained elusive. The gray-haired man returned as promised, accompanied by 2 guards who positioned themselves on either side of the door, weapons visible. "Have you considered our proposal, Captain?" he asked, his tone conversational, as if discussing a business arrangement rather than treason. "I have," Santiago replied, her expression carefully neutral. "I need assurances." A flicker of satisfaction crossed the man's face, the first crack in her resistance, or so he thought. "What kind of assurances?" "I want to see Wade and Chen, in person. I need to confirm they're alive and unharmed." The man considered this. "A reasonable request. Anything else?" "Once I provide what you want, all 3 of us are released. No additional demands." He smiled thinly. "You're not in a position to negotiate, Captain." "I'm the only one who can give you what you want," Santiago countered. "And you need it soon, before the compromise is detected and my access is revoked." It was a calculated risk, revealing that she understood the time-sensitive nature of their operation, but she needed to establish leverage, however slight. The man studied her for a long moment. "You'll see your team members. After that, we can discuss terms for their release. Your cooperation first, Captain. Then we talk about freedom." Santiago nodded, as if accepting this partial concession. In truth, she had expected nothing more. These people had no intention of releasing any of them alive. Once they had what they wanted, the 3 Americans would become liabilities to be eliminated. But seeing Wade and Chen was the critical first step in her escape plan. She needed to confirm their conditions, communicate her intentions, and coordinate their actions. "When?" she asked. "Now," he replied, gesturing to the guards. "They'll escort you. No sudden movements, please. My men are professionally paranoid and heavily armed." Santiago rose carefully, maintaining a slight hunch to appear more injured than she actually was. The guards flanked her as they left the cell, leading her down a narrow corridor with doors on either side. The facility appeared to be a repurposed apartment building or small hotel, with rooms converted to cells and security stations. They stopped at a door 3 down from her own. One guard opened it, while the other kept his weapon trained on her. Inside, Lieutenant Marcus Wade sat on a cot similar to her own, his left arm in a sling, dried blood visible on the bandage. He looked up, surprise and relief washing over his face when he saw her. "Captain," he said, struggling to his feet. "Lieutenant?" she replied, her eyes conveying a message her words could not. "Stay alert. Be ready." Wade gave an almost imperceptible nod. 6 years of working together had created a shorthand between them, an ability to communicate volumes with minimal signs. "You have 1 minute," the gray-haired man said from the doorway. Santiago moved closer to Wade. "How are you holding up?" "I've had better accommodations," Wade replied, his eyes scanning her for injuries while his voice remained casual. "Food's terrible. Service is worse." "Specialist Chen?" "Next door, I think. I hear her sometimes." Santiago nodded, processing this information. 3 cells in sequence, 3 prisoners. Predictable guard rotations. It wasn't much, but it was enough to begin constructing a viable plan. "They want my access credentials," she said quietly. "I'm stalling for time." Wade's eyes widened fractionally. "That's why they took us alive." "Yes, the whole operation was designed for this." She glanced at the guards, calculating distances, reaction times. "Be ready. 3 guard changes from now. Late night shift." Wade gave another subtle nod, understanding immediately. 3 guard changes would be approximately 18 hours from now, during the least alert shift when staffing would be minimal. "Time's up," the gray-haired man announced. They repeated the process with Specialist Chen, whose cell was indeed adjacent to Wade's. Chen was in worse condition, a bandaged head wound leaving her disoriented but conscious. Santiago managed to convey the essential message, "Be ready tonight," before being escorted back to her own cell. The gray-haired man followed her inside, dismissing the guards with a gesture. "Satisfied?" he asked. "They need medical attention," Santiago replied. "Proper care, not field dressings." "Their condition depends entirely on you, Captain." He leaned against the wall, studying her. "Now, let's discuss the practical details. Tomorrow morning, you'll be transported to a secure facility where you'll provide your biometric authentication for the targeting system. Once verified, we'll discuss your team's release." "Why not do it here?" "Security protocols. The authentication requires specialized equipment we maintain elsewhere." He straightened. "Rest, Captain. Tomorrow will be a significant day for all of us." After he left, Santiago lay on her cot, mind racing. The timetable had accelerated. If they were moving her tomorrow, her window for action was even narrower than she'd thought. Tonight would be their only chance. She retrieved the metal strip from beneath her mattress, testing its edge against her palm. Not sharp enough to be lethal, but sufficient to distract or wound if applied with enough force to vulnerable areas. The plan crystallized in her mind. Wait for the late shift, when staffing would be minimal. Create a medical emergency to draw a guard into her cell. Incapacitate him. Take his weapon and keycard. Free Wade and Chen. Find communications equipment to alert her command about their location and the nature of the breach. Dozens of things could go wrong. The guards might not respond to a medical emergency. They might come in force rather than individually. The facility might have protocols specifically designed to prevent such escape attempts. But the alternative was unthinkable, providing access that would compromise American military operations and endanger countless lives. Or refusing and watching her team members executed before likely being killed herself. No option was good. But Santiago had been trained to make impossible choices in impossible situations. She would act tonight, regardless of the odds.
Want this podcast without interruptions? Caliroga Plus delivers this show and over 20 premium shows completely ad-free, right to your favorite podcast player. We've just added exciting new series including Signal Lost. What happens when the most sensitive military intelligence in the world ends up on the wrong phone? White Smoke, taking you behind the scenes of all the interesting things that happen at the Vatican. And Pager Protocol, a thriller about getting exploding pagers into the hands of the bad guys. Plus, receive all your existing favorites like Palace Intrigue about the royal family, daily comedy news, 5 daily trivia questions, and 5 good news stories. Apple Podcast users, simply tap the banner in your Apple Podcasts app that says, Uninterrupted Listening, Spotify and other players. Visit caliroga.com/plus. If you missed all that, check the links in the show notes. It's just $4.99 a month for no ads. Listen on any device, on any player you love, completely hassle-free.
In a world of smartphones and quantum computing, the fate of nations rests on technology from the past. Caliroga Shark Media presents a new podcast, Pager Protocol, a 10-part espionage thriller that will change the way audiences see the world. As an unusually large shipment of pagers makes its way to a volatile region, CIA analyst Sarah Miller grows suspicious. Meanwhile, in Zion City, Nexus Director Amos Ben David sets a daring plan in motion. Agent Eli Cohen is tasked with a mission that could determine the fate of his nation and reshape the entire region. Pager Protocol is available now wherever you get your podcasts.
In Washington, Franklin Webb arrived at his company headquarters in Arlington, a sleek glass and steel building housing Obsidian Security Solutions. His executive suite on the top floor offered panoramic views of the Capitol, a daily reminder of the power center his business served and influenced. His chief of staff was waiting, tablet in hand. Sir, we have a situation developing. The Capitol Tribune is preparing to publish an exposé on the Yemen operation. Sources indicate it will directly implicate Reynolds and raise questions about our company's involvement. Webb absorbed this without visible reaction. How reliable is this information? Very. We have assets inside their editorial department. Webb walked to the window, considering the implications. Eliza Morgan's article would accelerate events beyond his ability to control. Reynolds would be on the defensive, potentially making desperate moves to save himself. The official investigation would intensify, with agencies looking to distance themselves from the scandal. Most concerning, his clients would be displeased by the additional scrutiny. When is publication scheduled? Noon today. Webb checked his watch. Just over 4 hours. Contact our legal team. I want injunction papers prepared, citing national security concerns. We won't file immediately, but I want the option available. Yes, sir. And arrange a meeting with Senator Campbell. Tell him it's urgent. Regarding? Webb turned from the window, his expression hardening. Regarding his committee's oversight of certain intelligence programs that might be compromised if this story proceeds unchecked. Invoking Campbell was a significant escalation. As chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the senator could apply pressure on national security grounds that might delay or water down the Tribune's story. It was a card Webb preferred not to play, as it created its own complications, but circumstances were rapidly deteriorating. One more thing, Webb added. Increase our electronic surveillance on Morgan, Patel, and Reynolds. I want to know every move they make, every call, every message. This is now damage control. As his chief of staff departed, Webb returned his gaze to the Washington skyline. The operation had been elegant in its conception, using the signal breach to create a distraction while the real objective was pursued. But now, with public exposure imminent, elegance was giving way to necessity. If Morgan's story couldn't be stopped, then its impact would need to be managed. Alternative narratives prepared, scapegoats identified, evidence redirected. The game was changing, but Webb had built his fortune by adapting to changing circumstances. This would be no different. At the White House, James Reynolds was summoned to the Oval Office shortly after the president's address to the nation. He found not just the president waiting, but the FBI director and the attorney general as well. Their expressions told him everything he needed to know. "Sir," Reynolds began, but the president cut him off with a raised hand. "The FBI has brought me disturbing information about Operation Sandstorm," the president said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Information suggesting the signal breach was more than negligence, that there may have been deliberate compromise of our operational security." Reynolds felt sweat forming at his hairline. "Mr. President, we're still investigating." "No, James, we are investigating now," the FBI director interrupted, emphasizing the change in authority. "My counterintelligence division has evidence of sophisticated infiltration targeting multiple officials involved in planning the operation." Reynolds struggled to maintain his composure. Mira must have gone to the FBI, circumventing his authority, a betrayal that could end both their careers, but hers was clearly a calculated sacrifice. "Sir, the situation is complex," Reynolds said, directing his words to the president. "We've been conducting our own inquiry with assistance from private sector experts who can operate with greater flexibility." "You mean Webb?" the Attorney General interjected, her tone making the name sound like an accusation. "A private contractor with his own agenda and conflicts of interest, whose company provided intelligence for the very operation that failed." The walls were closing in. Reynolds had miscalculated badly, assuming he could contain the investigation through Webb while establishing a narrative that protected his position. Now, with federal agencies involved, that approach had become untenable. "I've made mistakes in handling this situation," Reynolds acknowledged, shifting to damage control. "But my only concern has been national security and recovering our captured personnel." "Your concern should have been following proper protocols and allowing career professionals to conduct a legitimate investigation," the president replied. "Instead, you've created the appearance of a cover-up, which is exactly what we don't need right now." The rebuke stung, but Reynolds recognized the language for what it was: political distancing. The president was creating space between himself and the growing scandal. "I'm placing the FBI in charge of the investigation," the president continued. "You will provide full cooperation, including all communications, documents, and access to personnel. The National Security Council's internal inquiry is terminated, effective immediately." It was a public vote of no confidence, just short of outright dismissal. Reynolds understood he was being kept in position only because firing him now would appear to confirm wrongdoing before the investigation was complete. "I understand, Mr. President. You'll have my full cooperation." The meeting ended shortly thereafter, with the FBI director remaining behind for a private conversation with the president. As Reynolds left the Oval Office, he felt the weight of his miscalculations crushing down on him. His attempt to protect himself had backfired spectacularly, and the situation was about to get worse. His assistant met him in the corridor, her expression grave. "Sir, the Capital Tribune is publishing an exposé on the Yemen operation at noon today. Our sources say it directly implicates you in security failures leading to the ambush." Reynolds stopped dead in the hallway. "Who's the reporter?" "Eliza Morgan." Of course. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Mira hadn't just gone to the FBI, she'd gone to the press as well. A two-pronged attack designed to ensure the truth emerged regardless of potential obstruction. "Get me Webb on a secure line," Reynolds said, resuming his walk toward his office, "and clear my schedule for the rest of the day." The nation was about to learn of his failures, both real and perceived. His only hope now was to align his narrative with whoever was truly behind the breach, to become an instrument of investigation rather than its target. It was a desperate play, but he had no other options left. At exactly noon, the Capital Tribune published Eliza Morgan's article online, and in a special print edition. The headline, "Betrayed: How Security Failures Led to Yemen Disaster," appeared above a detailed account of the Signal chat breach, the compromised accounts, and the systematic failures that had allowed sensitive operational details to flow to hostile forces. The article named names. It presented evidence. It connected dots that officials had desperately tried to keep separate. Within minutes, the story was being picked up by every major news outlet. Within an hour, congressional leaders from both parties were calling for investigations. By mid-afternoon, the White House was in full crisis management mode, with the press secretary facing a barrage of questions from journalists who smelled blood in the water. From her secure location, a Tribune-owned apartment maintained for reporters facing threats, Eliza watched the fallout spread across television news and social media. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from colleagues, sources, and unknown numbers, likely belonging to officials seeking to shape the narrative. She ignored them all, focusing instead on her next task, identifying the hidden players behind the conspiracy. The article had established the fact of betrayal, but not its ultimate source or purpose. That would require deeper investigation, following financial trails, communication patterns, and the digital breadcrumbs left by even the most careful operators. Her laptop pinged with an encrypted message from Mira. "Good work. Be careful. They're moving faster now." Eliza typed a response. "Who is they?" The reply came quickly, still determining. "Webb is key. Follow his connections." Before Eliza could respond, another message appeared. "Have to go dark. FBI protection now. Trust no one outside established channels." The communication window closed, leaving Eliza with more questions than answers. Webb was connected somehow, not just as a contractor trying to manage the investigation, but potentially as something more sinister, a facilitator, a catalyst, perhaps even an architect of the entire operation. She began compiling everything she could find on Franklin Webb and Obsidian security solutions: government contracts, financial records, personnel movements, connections to foreign entities or unusual fund transfers. If Webb was the key, she would find the door he unlocked.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
As night fell over Yemen, Captain Santiago prepared for her escape attempt. She had spent hours observing the guard rotations, memorizing timing and procedures. The late shift was the weakest, 2 guards covering multiple prisoners, with a supervisor who remained in the central monitoring station rather than conducting regular patrols. Her window would come between 2 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., when the most attentive guard took his regular break, leaving the less experienced one alone on duty. Santiago lay on her cot, the metal strip concealed in her hand, and began moaning loudly, a sound of pain escalating gradually into cries for help. She thrashed on the cot, making as much noise as possible while keeping her movements controlled and purposeful. After several minutes, she heard footsteps approaching. The observation window in her door slid open, revealing the younger guard's face, his expression caught between concern and suspicion. "What's wrong?" he demanded in accented English. Santiago clutched her bandaged shoulder, contorting her face in apparent agony. "Something's torn open. I'm bleeding badly." The guard hesitated, peering through the window at the theatrical display. Santiago had smeared some of her remaining dried blood on the bandage to create the appearance of fresh bleeding. "Wait for medical," he replied, starting to close the window. "I could be dead by then," Santiago gasped, intensifying her performance. "Your boss won't be happy if you let a valuable prisoner die on your watch." The logic penetrated the guard's uncertainty. His orders were clear: keep the prisoners alive, especially the female captain who possessed the access they needed. He spoke into his radio, requesting backup, but received only static in response. The facility's thick walls often interfered with communications in certain areas, another detail Santiago had observed and was now exploiting. After another moment's hesitation, the guard unlocked the door, weapon raised cautiously as he entered the cell. Santiago continued her pained writhing, drawing him closer to the cot while keeping her hand with the metal strip concealed beneath her body. "Let me see," he said, leaning forward to examine the supposedly bleeding wound. It was the opening she needed. In one fluid motion, Santiago drove the metal strip into the side of his neck. Not deep enough to be lethal, but sufficient to shock and temporarily incapacitate. Before he could react, her other hand shot out and seized his weapon, twisting it free while simultaneously delivering a sharp blow to his throat that collapsed his airway. The guard crumpled, gasping for breath that wouldn't come, blood seeping from the neck wound. Santiago moved quickly, securing his sidearm and retrieving his radio, keycard, and a set of plastic restraints from his belt. She used the restraints to bind him, then tore a strip from the bedsheet to gag him. He would live, but wouldn't be raising an alarm anytime soon. Checking the corridor through the partially open door, Santiago confirmed it was empty before slipping out and moving silently toward Wade's cell. The keycard worked on his door, and she found him already on his feet, having heard the commotion and prepared himself. "Nice timing, Captain," he whispered, eyes widening at the weapon in her hand. "One guard down, at least one more on duty," she replied, keeping her voice low. "Chen is next door. We move together, find communications, alert command, then extract if possible." Wade nodded, falling immediately into the operational mindset that had made him her most trusted teammate. "Lead the way." They repeated the process at Chen's cell, finding the specialist groggy but alert enough to follow instructions. The three Americans moved cautiously through the corridor, Santiago in the lead with the captured weapon, Wade supporting Chen in the middle, all of them hyper-aware that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. They needed to find the facility's communication center, likely near the central security station, and send an emergency signal with their location and situation before their escape was discovered. Santiago estimated they had perhaps 10 minutes before the incapacitated guard was missed by his colleague or supervisor. As they rounded a corner, they encountered exactly what they'd hoped to avoid: the second guard, returning early from his break. He froze for a split second at the sight of the escaped prisoners, then reached for his weapon. Santiago fired first, 2 shots that struck the guard center mass. He collapsed against the wall, leaving a smear of blood as he slid to the floor. The gunshots eliminated any hope of stealth. Alarms would sound within moments. Their timetable had just compressed from minutes to seconds. "Run," Santiago ordered, abandoning caution for speed. "Look for comms equipment, satellite phone, anything that can reach outside." They sprinted down the corridor, checking rooms as they passed. Most were empty or contained nothing useful: storage, basic living quarters, a small medical facility. Then Wade called out from a door near the end of the hall. "Here, comm center." Santiago and Chen joined him in what appeared to be a small operations room. Multiple monitors displayed security feeds from around the facility. A rack of communication equipment lined one wall, including what Santiago immediately recognized as a military-grade satellite transmission system. "Chen, can you get a signal out?" Santiago asked, knowing the specialist had signals training. Chen nodded despite her injuries, moving to the equipment with practiced hands. "Give me 2 minutes. What's the message?" "Authentication code, Sierra Tango 9940. Then our coordinates, if you can establish them. Followed by 3 Eagles compromised. Require immediate extraction. Targeting system breach in progress. They'll understand." While Chen worked the communications equipment, Santiago and Wade monitored the security feeds, watching as personnel began responding to the alarm. Armed men were converging on their position from multiple directions. "We've got maybe 3 minutes before they reach us," Wade said grimly. Santiago assessed their situation with brutal clarity. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Chen was in no condition for sustained combat. Even if the message got through, extraction would take hours at minimum. "Message sent," Chen announced, "but I can't confirm receipt. The connection was unstable." Santiago made her decision. "Wade, get Chen out of here. There's a service exit shown on that monitor." She pointed to a security feed showing a door leading to what appeared to be an alley. "I'll hold this position as long as possible to buy you time." Wade's expression hardened. "With respect, Captain, that's a suicide mission." "That's an order, Lieutenant," Santiago replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Get our intelligence out. Make sure command understands what they're after. Access to the targeting network. Someone in our chain is compromised." After a moment of tense silence, Wade nodded. He understood the calculus as well as she did. One of them might escape with critical intelligence. 3 of them would all be captured or killed. "It's been an honor, Captain," he said simply. "Likewise, Lieutenant. Now move." As Wade helped Chen toward the service exit, Santiago positioned herself at the main entrance to the communications room, weapon ready. She had 1 sidearm, limited ammunition, and a desperate mission. Buy enough time for her team members to escape with intelligence that could save countless lives. On the security monitors, she watched armed men moving methodically toward her position. Among them was the gray-haired man, directing the response with cold efficiency, his expression one of professional annoyance rather than anger. Santiago took a deep breath, steadying herself for what was to come. She had done her duty. She had refused to compromise critical systems. She had given her team a chance, however slim, to escape with information that might expose the conspiracy. Whatever happened next, she would face it knowing she had made the right choice. The first attackers reached the door. Santiago aimed carefully and opened fire. As dawn broke over Washington the day after Eliza's article was published, the political earthquake it triggered continued to grow. Congressional hearings were being scheduled. The Defense Department had announced an independent review. The White House was struggling to contain a narrative rapidly spinning beyond its control. At FBI headquarters, Meera Patel sat in a secure interview room, providing a detailed statement to agents from the Counterintelligence Division. Her decision to come forward had ended her career in government, but she maintained the conviction that she had done the right thing. When the interview concluded, the lead agent remained behind, his expression grave. "We've received intelligence overnight," he said quietly. "There was an incident at a facility in Yemen where we believe the captured Americans were being held. Gunfire. Signs of a partial escape attempt." Mira's heart raced. "Do we know who got out, if anyone?" "Unclear, but approximately 30 minutes after the incident, a fragmented message was received by CENTCOM, authentication codes matching Captain Santiago's unit, followed by a warning about the targeting system being compromised." "Then she's alive. Or was? Possibly. We're considering it credible intelligence and have elevated the security level for all systems Santiago had access to. If someone was trying to extract authentication from her, it means we were right," Meera finished. "This was never about killing Americans or even conventional intelligence gathering. It was about gaining access to our military networks." The agent nodded, which raises the critical question: who would have the resources to orchestrate something this sophisticated? And more importantly, who would benefit from such access? It was the same question Eliza Morgan was pursuing from her secure location, combing through Franklin Webb's connections and contracts. The same question that FBI analysts were approaching from their angle, examining digital forensics and intelligence patterns. And unknown to all of them, it was the question that Webb himself was now confronting, as he realized the operation had evolved beyond his initial understanding or control. The shadow players were emerging into the light, but as they did, the full dimensions of the conspiracy and its potential consequences were only beginning to become clear. In Yemen, Lieutenant Wade and Specialist Chen moved carefully through darkened streets, using the urban environment to evade pursuers. Behind them, the sound of gunfire had stopped, a silence more ominous than the chaos that preceded it. Wade knew what it likely meant. Santiago had either been killed or recaptured. Their window for escape was closing fast. But they had the intelligence. They had the warning about the targeting system. If they could reach friendly forces or a communication point with a more stable connection, they could ensure the captain's sacrifice wasn't in vain. That responsibility now rested entirely on their shoulders. The weight of it drove them forward, step by painful step, into the uncertain dawn.
Signal Lost is a production of Calaroga Shark Media. Executive producers Mark Francis and John McDermott. The assistance of AI was used in the production of this show.
Miami. Neon dreams. Dark desires. A killer stalks the streets, turning murder into macabre art. Introducing a new limited series podcast from Calaroga Shark Media. The Artist, A Killer's Canvas. This podcast is rated R, intended for mature audiences. The Artist, A Killer's Canvas. Available on all podcast apps now.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.